And then we passed a section and I was like, look, there's a history of pirates book. And she was like, why would they write a book about pirates? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, they were rule breakers, Andrew.
Why would you glorify this?
I have come on a mission of gravest consequence. For I am the Watcher, member of an ancient race far older than man. But though our power is great, we are pledged only to watch, never to interfere. But now mankind faces the greatest danger it has ever known. The danger of
the Watchers of Earth. 199,999.
Welcome to the Watchers of Earth 199,999. I am your host, Andrew, and joining me as always is my co-host, Seth.
Yeah, I don't know why we took a week off. Maybe more. We don't know yet.
Are you delayed or are you...
No, you said that and I expected more. I expected more fanfare, honestly.
And joining me, as always, is my co-host, Seth. Woo!
I forgot the trumpet noise. I was going to do the trumpet noise and I forgot.
I'm sure that pissed off my neighbors. Our third co-host, Joe, couldn't be here today because I refused his demands for a more interesting introduction.
Nice.
And our fourth co-host, Uatu, is here, but he is sworn only to watch and never interfere.
Even nicer. So today, we watched the first 4 episodes of WandaVision, which originally started, I guess, January 15th, 2021, created by Jack Schaefer. I don't remember any of this stuff that we used to do. It's been so long. Blends the style of classic sitcoms with the MCU, in which Wanda Maximoff and Vision, two superpowered beings living their ideal suburban lives, begin to suspect that everything is not as it seems. So, Andrew, in a sentence or less, what did you think of the first 4 episodes of WandaVision?
To avoid spoilers, because I have already watched all of WandaVision, I quite like WandaVision. I quite like these first 4 episodes, especially the first 3. I think the sitcom stuff is really fun. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that, not necessarily that there's less sitcom stuff, but there's more non-sitcom stuff coming, which is why I chose to stop on the 4th episode, because I think that's the one that kind of like indicates where the show's going.
Yeah, that's the shift.
But I quite like WandaVision. It's, so far, out of everything we've watched, it's the most different thing in the Marvel Universe, and for that, it goes a long way for me. What about you?
So I liked it, and I know that's a little airy in my voice for a definitive approval. I've mentioned this a tiny bit, with the ability of being able to watch, or watching these... I'm doing great after the break. With watching these in halves... I didn't watch them all today like I normally do with movies, so we can break some silence that we didn't have with the movies. I mentioned to you that in a world with binging television, I wish I would have just watched all 4 episodes in one go. I think it was maybe a little detrimental that I just watched episodes 1 and 2 on Friday and then took a day off on Saturday and then watched 3 and 4.
To be fair, this show was not originally bingeable.
Really? Well, then egg on my face.
The first 2 episodes aired together as the premiere.
And then everything else was weekly?
Everything else was weekly.
Okay.
That's with all these Marvel shows. And honestly, that's the way I prefer things. I like 1 episode a week. When something is bingeable, that means it goes onto a list to never be watched, because I don't look at it as like, I just got to watch like an hour every week.
It's like a 6-hour movie.
It's like a 6-hour commitment where I'm just like, I'm either watching all of it or I'm watching none of it.
Well, egg on my face then. I did like it. We'll get into more nuance and stuff like that. We're only halfway through. I did like it, and that's that. So next time we'll watch part 2. No. So I'm going to jump in here for a little bit. So the first episode is like an I Love Lucy bit. And, you know, we watched it, and I started out, and I was like, yeah, this is fun. And then like maybe a third of the way in, I started thinking, okay, this is like too on the nose of what it's parodying and like homaging, that I didn't really care for it, because I don't love that 50s sitcom
I really like, not necessarily 50s sitcom, but I like the commitment to it. I thought some of the jokes are corny, but they're like corny in a good way. And some of the jokes I thought were funny.
Well, and that's what I wanted to get to, is that like, then in like the last third, you can only commend them for, I mean, it's obviously put together by people that know the period really well. They know what they're doing.
They know their source material.
Yeah, it is impressive to say the least. But it was just one of those things. It's kind of like the cyclical joke of it's funny, it's boring, and then it comes back around to being funny again because it went on so long. And it's kind of how this felt, where I was like, yeah, this is neat. And then I was like, oh, but it's not doing anything. It is just a 50s sitcom. And then after that, I came around and I said, okay, well, like, this is very impressive. And like,
to be fair, I remembered the ending of the first episode, but kind of like forgot. It's weird. I remembered that it happened, and I just kept thinking like,
you're talking about the little the stuff at the end of all the episodes where it's like the TV screen and it's like
actually I'm talking about the surreal bit at the end where he starts choking.
Oh.
And then that's where you're cute. Like that's what I was going to say is like, it's not just the homage. Like there's definitely something more going on, and I kind of thought that there was a little bit less of it.
But that's honestly at the last like 5 minutes.
I thought something else happened during the episode, although like I watched all four together, and
I watched it 2 days ago, so you're lucky if I remember
blur
anything.
a little bit. But I will say, like I told you before, and I mentioned on the podcast, I believe before, I was talking to a coworker about Loki and stuff, and he said he didn't watch WandaVision because he watched the first episode and thought it was stupid. And he didn't know what the point was. And I looked at him like he was a crazy person because I thought it was the most interesting thing a Marvel property has done yet.
I can see what they're saying, though. Like, I can see what both of you are saying, honestly.
But I guess I can hear what you were saying earlier. I don't think that's what he was saying, though. I think his thing was like,
no one punched each other in the face.
Yeah, he wanted the next Marvel thing. And this instead was kind of its own weird thing, and he just did not care about that weird thing, which I guess is fine, but he just wanted more of that homogenized Marvel crap. And that's what I don't really care for in this show, especially in this first half, is the mystery was kind of fun the first time. When you hit like the surreal bits, like with the beekeeper and everything, where you're just kind of like, I wonder what this is doing. But then I'm also just like, that's not what I care about in this show. Personally, for me, I care about the sitcom stuff. I think the sitcom stuff is a lot of fun and it is very enjoyable. And I feel like the Marvel Universe stuff kind of bogs it down. And I was disappointed to find out that I think it's called, and now for, I don't remember.
Something.
Whatever. What?
Yeah.
It's some kind of like, and now for some messages or.
The commercials? Or are you talking
We
about
interrupt this program. Sorry.
Are you talking about
the
an episode title?
Episode 4 is, every episode title is called something relevant to a sitcom.
Yeah.
And episode 4 is called We Interrupt This Program, because that's the one that is not a sitcom episode.
Right.
I was just trying to remember its title and I was struggling. That one, while it's interesting as a, like, what is the show doing sort of thing, I find it kind of a boring episode. I like the sitcom stuff. I think the episode with the magic trick is actually a very, very funny sitcom script. Mm-hmm. I think that entire episode is very funny. And I'm more interested in that stuff. And this is, like you said, this is the shift. There's still sitcom stuff to come, but there's more of the not sitcom stuff going on now. And I don't remember if runtimes start lengthening. I believe the finale is an hour.
I saw one of them was like 40 minutes or whatever. It was nice to see them 30 minutes. So we sat down to watch the first episode. I was thinking it was an hour and we finished it. And I was like, okay, well, we'll watch another one. But so that's what I was going to say about your friend that you were talking about. I think, especially only watching the first episode is weird.
Especially since they premiered the first two together. I feel like you watch those, and by the end of the first one, but I think definitely by the end of the second one, you realize that that's not what the show is.
Yes. But so, again, I can see why you could write the whole thing off only watching the first episode. I rarely do that where I write a show off on the first episode. I usually try and give them a couple. You know, some people do. Some people's time is more valuable than ours, or than we value ours. But I can see being thrown off on that first episode. I do agree. I think the like choking bit at the end of the first episode, I didn't think anything of it. I remember thinking it was like weird that it was happening, and I felt like I was kind of missing something. But it plays it so straight-faced to the whole thing. And so I just like didn't... You know, obviously I knew the show wasn't...
I mean, I felt like it's even like filmed differently. Like everything has that like wide single camera sitcom thing. And then for those, there's a lot of tight shots on faces. I think even the camera quality is different.
It might have even gone to letterbox instead of the 4:3.
But I felt like that was a clear indication that the show has a shift, that there is something more going on than just like a parody of sitcoms.
Right. And I think at that point, I mean, like I said, I knew this was more than just like a parody of sitcoms. And so, I expected some of that. But it wasn't, for my dumb brain, it wasn't enough like the end of the first episode or whatever where they're like, they zoom out and they show the lab. Or not the lab, but the base or whatever. After we finished the first episode, we're like, okay, we kind of have to watch the second one. Because, like, this was weird. In a good way. Not in like a, what did I get myself into? But like, it was interesting. Like I said.
It was intriguing?
Yeah, I mean, they did it like, or I guess, I don't know if it was intriguing to me. I think the series as a whole is intriguing to me. This was one of the ones I was more excited for because it was different. But I don't know if, like, without any of that stuff, where I would land on the first episode. Like, we didn't watch the second episode because we're like, we gotta know what happens. We watched the second episode because we were like,
what is this?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, okay, we watched like a sitcom, and it was impressive, but what is this? And I think the second episode does a better job of kind of blending those things. Isn't the second episode the one with the drone?
Yes.
And like, I think that's an interesting spot. That's the second episode is the radio too, and like when the one woman cuts her hand and stuff like, and that's more on the nose than the choking in the first episode. There's more like, what's the small Twin Peaksy stuff, like weirdness, which I like. I agree with you. I think the Magic Show is a very good sitcom script. I think that one hit me better as a sitcom parody than the first one did. I also think it did a nicer job with kind of like the weirdness of what is going on with the drone. Was that also the one with the beekeeper?
Yes, he comes out at the end.
Yeah.
Because it's after the beekeeper is the color shift.
Yeah, because I actually kind of forgot about the beekeeper when I watched what happened in the third episode?
The third episode, I
literally
forgetting.
Just watched it before
the third episode is the one, it's the one that's in color, that's the 70s.
Oh, it's like the Brady Bunch one.
That's where she gets pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where she gets pregnant and has the baby, and then there's like a stork around, and
then she shoots the Rambo out of the thing.
Yeah.
That one was whatever. I didn't remember it, and I just watched it.
It's very forgettable, and I think that's where this. From what I remember, that is an indication of kind of the show not being necessarily what I want it to be, because I feel like that one starts to go a little more into the meta stuff, or at least the meta to Wanda's fictional universe, everything happening outside, and then the fourth one is fully quote unquote meta. I mean, it's not actually meta, but it's outside of her fictional world, everything that's going on.
Well, it's the explanation of the first three.
Yes, but from that point forward, the show is more about that stuff, and the sitcom stuff is mostly just like a vehicle for that stuff to continue happening in weird ways. And granted, I don't really remember the next 5 episodes super well, but I remember the sitcom stuff being more impressive. Like, there's more stuff that's like impressive where it's just like they really committed to this bit, to finding the voice of just like a generation of sitcoms, or at least a specific like high profile sitcom from that time period, and replicating it and emulating it, and that stuff is impressive. But I feel like the first 2 episodes are sitcom scripts, and then a couple weird things happen. The third episode is a sitcom script, but like more about the weird stuff that's going on around it.
It's like a halfway point. I agree with you on that.
And then from there on, from everything that I remember going forward, it's mostly a sitcom script happening in the background of the weird stuff going on inside and outside of that town.
And I guess you could argue because that's like Wanda like coming out of her world thing and stuff like that. So you could make thematic sense of it. I
understand why it is that way. And I think like it makes complete sense for the show they're doing. And I don't think the show they're doing is bad. It's just the show they're doing is not the show that I am personally interested in.
So you mentioned that you're more interested in the sitcom stuff than we've been referring to it as the meta stuff. And maybe you mean something a little more nuanced here, because I can kind of agree with that. But I don't necessarily know if, like, we used to watch those shorts. I say used to, like this was years ago. But like when we watched the shorts at the end of the movies, or the 15-minute things. And I feel like WandaVision as a classic sitcom is a good episode. But I felt like maybe the first 2 episodes and the third one, like, if that's what the show needs, something more than that.
I don't disagree with you. Like, and that's why I'm saying, like, I understand why the show is what it is. That's just not what's interesting to me. Like, it's not me saying, like, it should be a different type of show, because I fully agree with you. Like, the show that I want is not a show that
like,
could
be
really
me for a
exist.
second, where we'll talk about a movie and I'm like, this didn't do exactly what I wanted, and this is what it should have done, and then you go, okay, but like, it didn't, and like, you'd have to rewrite the whole thing. Like, what would you want?
For an ideal version of the show that doesn't have to fit into anything else, it's just in a perfect world where I just make the show that I want, it would probably be the Marvel Universe as a sitcom.
Yeah,
it wouldn't
you
even have
could
to be
do-
limited to Wanda and Vision. It could just be like each episode is just a sitcom parody of maybe each season is an entire decade's worth of sitcoms.
I don't even think
And
you'd
it
need that,
just,
even
like,
if it was like
takes-
a little anthology thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, as an anthology where it's just like
Each
each episode is its
yeah.
own thing. And then you just take elements from these other movies and throw them into a sitcom setting. And it's just like, there's an episode on Civil War where it's actually like Steve and Tony are like roommates and they like divide their apartment in half and they're yelling at each other and they get all their friends
that's
have a basketball game outside to determine who gets to make all the rules in the apartment because Tony won't fold his clothes, but Steve won't do the dishes. Like that sort of thing.
and I agree with that.
Which is not this show.
Right.
And I know that.
And that's not even the first two episodes. And I don't know if it's just because the first two episodes are handcuffed by what the show is, because I think the first 3 episodes in WandaVision are kind of, you're saying that the most interesting stuff for you is the sitcom stuff. I agree. I think that's the different stuff. We've been watching 23 movies of Marvel stuff. This is different. But at the same time, I think those first 3 episodes can be very one note.
I don't disagree.
Like
with you.
the joke, for lack of a better term, or like the interesting thing is like how impressive it is that they captured that style and time period and aesthetic so well. But it doesn't lend itself to like a 9-episode series unless they went even further than what they do here in the first 3 episodes and said, we're just going to treat it, we are going to turn the Marvel Cinematic Universe into a sitcom, as opposed to, we're going to play around with these sitcom styles while doing Marvel stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun experiment,
Mhm.
but it is telling a story. And by the end of the 4th episode, it is incredibly clear it is telling a story. And I just personally don't really have any interest in the story it's telling.
And so, okay, so, I mentioned before that him choking in the first episode was something that maybe went over my head a little. I knew it was like a weirdness.
I don't really understand what happened in that choking scene.
It just
Just
everything
because-
kind of like slows down.
I couldn't tell so watching it a second time through, the first time through, it was just like he's choking and this is weird and surreal. And
Yeah.
I was just like, what's going on? Like what's happening? Is this...
It's obviously not
It's
supposed to happen.
Yeah, is this like the first signs of like people breaking from a script, or is something like wrong, or is he like following the script and he's supposed to choke, but that's going horribly wrong? And I didn't really know. Watching it this time, like I don't know if that's like he was starting to ask too many questions and they weren't able to answer them, and that was Wanda, whether intentionally or not, causing him to choke as a means to get him to stop, because once he stops choking, he's just like, this was a great dinner, see you later. And I don't know what that scene is other than to be surreal and uncomfortable. Like, it is to show you that what you're watching is not actually what is happening.
I mean, I definitely think that's the main drive of that scene. But I think thematically, after watching the first 4 episodes, I do think that is Wanda kind of losing control over what's happening. They're asking too many questions. She needs to stop it. I think that's why everything kind of slows down. She just kind of like stares. And then she's just like, okay, Vision, you got to help him. The second episode, I think, had some nice Twin Peaks stuff with the helicopter and her cutting her hand, the radio and stuff like that. I mean, the second episode was the best episode of these 4 by far. But after that, yeah, the third episode I felt was very...
The third episode, I literally just watched it about an hour
Yeah,
or so
same here.
ago. And I keep forgetting that it happened. Even watching it, like sitting down to watch it again, as it was going on, I was like, oh, I kind of remember this.
It was the one least like a sitcom.
Yeah, I distinctly remember the magic trick. I distinctly remember the dinner. I distinctly remember the 4th episode where you just kind of like break away from the show for a little bit. But I remembered that there was a pregnancy thing. I remembered that a stork was going to be wandering around at some point. But like the rest of it, like and even now, just having watched it, I'm just like, I barely really remember what happened in it. She's pregnant out of nowhere, and the world is now in color, and they go to the doctor. Here's the thing, and it's something that this is more of a 4th episode thing, but in the 4th episode, they're talking about more episodes than we have seen.
Yes, this
Because
is
they
like a
make
daily thing or a weekly thing.
Yes.
This is...
Which is fine. And again, there's you could easily hand wave this and just be like, Andrew, you're overthinking it, because I am. But
that's what we do. That's our special move.
episodes 1, 2, and 3, as they're presented, literally take place one after. Well, 1 and 2 don't necessarily have to.
But 2 and 3 do.
2 and 3 definitely take place one after another. But they make reference in
the third one, don't they, about the dinner?
They make reference in the fourth one, like when they're talking about the other episodes, that I believe they say something that takes place between episodes 2 and 3 from our perspective. Like they talk about like previous episodes or something. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
But it is a weird thing. It's like a weird fridge logic of, it's one thing to sit there and say, okay, this is just like these weird moments. It's not to say, oh, but these, like, there's whole seasons of these shows. There's more than than the one episode you see, and then you go to the fridge and you're like, wait a minute, none of that makes sense. These are all like one after another because the show needs them to be.
And like the first episode we watch is the first episode that Darcy and the crew watch, but it is presumably there have been multiple episodes that took place before that episode because they're not made for an audience.
Right.
They're just hijacking that signal. So presumably episodes exist before that. But that first episode, I mean, I guess they could, you could talk your way out of this, Marvel writers.
Hit us up. Talk your way out of this.
You could say that, like, you know, there were episodes that took place before this that were just whatever. But conveniently, the very first episode we watch is the episode of them, like, apparently talking about their marriage for the first time and realizing that they're not actually married and they don't know how they got there. And I feel like, I don't know, there would have been a moving in episode or literally any episode about getting a job or any episode that took place before the episode about the big dinner where somebody would have asked them a question. They would have scratched their head on it, because it's not like people ask these questions and they're like, I don't know, I don't understand. And then, like, you know, someone slams a door and then they're distracted and they're just like, oh, now I am no longer thinking about that thing. Like, throughout that episode, they are constantly wondering how they got to where they were because they just don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. We also, I mean, the only important thing that happens in the third episode is that she gives birth to 2 kids and that Monica
is blown out of
the
sitcom
thing. The fourth episode is where we learn kind of a little bit more of what's going on. We're reintroduced to Darcy from the Thor movies, which is she's now a theoretical physicist or something. I forget exactly what she said.
Astrophysicist.
Yeah, which is what I was saying before, where she was just an intern. Granted, even within the course of the movies' timelines, if she didn't blip away for 5 years, she's had like a decade to pursue a career. So it's fine.
Yeah, it's whatever. I don't know. It's
one of those things that it's like a fan service thing that bothers me. Like, and it bothers only me. But it's like you see Jimmy Woo from the Ant-Man movies. You see her. You see Monica, and they're all like important and showing back up in big roles where they're kind of at the center of everything, and that's fine. And it's just like kind of fun interconnectiveness of the Marvel universe, but it's also just like
it makes the world smaller because everybody's important, and if everybody's important, no one's important.
Exactly.
And I agree with you where, you know, you first see Jimmy Woo, and it's like, oh, hey, it's that guy from Ant-Man. And then you see her, and you're like, oh, is that the girl from Thor? And then Rambeau shows up, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's Captain Marvel. And I was like, but I don't know if I care. Like, I can't look at it as an audience member and sit there and be like, oh, these characters. I'm just like, Marvel has these actors. There's probably some contract thing where it's just like, anybody can come back at any time. And they're just like, since we have this huge cinematic universe, we need to make sure that we contract people far past what their obligation is right now, because we don't know what we're going to do with them.
And I mean, much like watching Endgame, it's not like it's not impressive. From a meta standpoint, it's kind of cool to see like actors and characters show up from other properties to pop into this one.
But I just see through that movie magic.
Yeah,
I like can't not immerse myself in it because I know what's happening. So yeah, this fourth episode is somewhat of a problem for me. And this is kind of where I
turned on the show a little bit the first time.
Still
not really turned on it.
It's not bad. I mean, honestly, it's better than the 23 movies I watched. One, I think because it's different. Two, I think because it is digestible in an episodic format. But we get here, and I think episode 4 has a little bit of the problem of the mystery is interesting, the answer's not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting to see the guy choke. It's interesting to see the helicopter and all like the weird stuff happening. And I guess as soon as I'll even own up to the fact that like, oh, it's interesting to get these 2 stories going on where they're the audience trying to figure it out just in a way that can interact with the show. That's fine for me. And I think you can do that interestingly. The problem is I don't really care that this is like Wanda closing herself off from the problems of Thanos. And especially because, one, I think I'm just not really interested in that story. Two, it just kind of, it's not even like, I don't know, there's 5 more episodes left, so maybe I'm wrong and another egg on my face, but it doesn't even feel like there's much more you can do with that. It's just like, okay, now we gotta save Wanda from herself.
So...
And you don't need to tell me, I mean, that's just me talking.
No.
I don't need to know more or anything like that, but that's how it feels right now.
Part of my issue with it is, some of it is it feels impatient with its mystery. Like, it presents, I guess the choking doesn't have an answer, but it presents some mysteries, like, you know, who is this Geraldine woman? Who is Monica? What was with the beekeeper? What was with the radio? What was with the helicopter? And those are all, like you said, the mystery is interesting. The answers are not. Those are all interesting teases, but it waits 2 episodes before it gives you those answers. And it feels very impatient, like it was worried. And I mean, rightfully so, case in point with my coworker, but it felt like it was really worried that people were going to lose interest if they didn't know what was happening. And like if they didn't know that it was going to be the Marvel thing. I mean, they only did 3 sitcom episodes before, and we couldn't even really remember the 3rd one, but they only did 3 sitcom episodes before fully abandoning it for an episode to ensure you that this matters. Because it doesn't even feel like we got to do the Marvel thing that people like. It felt like it needed to let everybody know that it mattered, that it was important. Look at all these characters that are coming back. And I mean, that's a little bit of pessimism from me.
Well, it also doesn't help for me that because they blow their load so early, like, the choking is something that went in one eye and out the other. I think in hindsight, like, I get it more.
Still don't think that's how eyes work.
In hindsight, I get it more, but it's just something in the first episode, it's like, oh, this is weird and an otherwise straight-laced thing. The drone is interesting because it's like, hey, this is in color, like something's different. This is like, okay, this is interesting. And then you said that the end of the second episode was the beekeeper, which is honestly feels like it's just written in there as like, oh, wouldn't that be like a cool scene? It's like a trailer scene.
It feels like the smoke monster thing from Lost, where they were just like, we're going to throw in this thing that's going to be weird and everyone's going to ask questions.
It's going to be a cool visual. And it's going to make people talk on Twitter.
I think the more interesting thing about the beekeeper is not him specifically, but that we see that Wanda specifically reverses time. Because that's where she stops time and she says, like, no.
Oh, yeah.
He crawls back down, they reverse time, and then they go back to, like, the conversation they were having before they walked outside, and then it continues from there without the distraction.
You're right.
And that's where I think that's the first bit of, like,
her control.
That's the first bit of like Wanda's has some kind of control, whether she realizes it or not. I think that's more interesting. But like you said, like in the 4th episode, it kind of blows its load. It kind of like shows you all of its cards, and then from there, it's just kind of a where's it going to end, as opposed to like what's happening here. Which in some ways isn't bad. It's just, I don't know, the mystery is interesting. And when you remove the mystery, then it's just kind of like, oh, we're getting to the Marvel thing. I don't know, is there a villain that's going to show up? Is like Captain America going to pop in and be like, Wanda, snap out of it? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I kept trying to, like, think about what was going on. And who's the Marvel villain that just, like, watches TV? Mondo or...
I think it is Mondo. The X-Men villain that's the big, like, yellow guy.
Yeah.
Spider chair. Yeah,
like,
I think it's Mondo. Or Mogo.
Mogo, the Living Planet. No.
Oh, yeah, it's not Mogo. Is it Mondo? Hold on. I gotta find out.
I don't know, but that's like...
You keep talking.
That's like what I was thinking. I was like, okay, like, are they doing like a Mondo thing? And I was just trying to figure it out. And honestly, it was so nice to have forgotten about the Infinity Saga until the 4th episode when everyone's reappearing. And I was just like, oh yeah, we have to like we're dealing with Fallout. I mean, even in Phase 4...
Mojo.
Yeah, even in Phase 4, we can't... What? Are you looking at Mojo pictures now?
No, Mojo. So on the Villains Wiki, which is where I clicked on the first thing that popped up for it was like I searched X-Men villain that watches TV.
How about searches?
It says Mojo, and then it has his portrait, and above it, it says evildoer, real big.
Yeah, that's what he is.
I'll just send you this so you can see, because just me telling you is not going to do it justice.
I'm sure me looking at it now isn't going to do it justice.
Probably not.
Especially that picture. But I guess it's even in like this goofy font.
I know, right? I told you, me telling you is not going to do it justice.
It's like a Lord of the Rings font.
Evildoer. Anyway, you were saying?
I don't know. You caught me off guard here. No, but so like it being her, I guess I'm just... I don't know. Or no, that's what I was talking about. Even in Phase 4, we're still dealing with Infinity Saga. And I don't care. Like, when are we going to be done with Infinity Saga? Are we going to be talking about the blip forever? And, like, that's the only way you can make stories? At least stupid events in comics stop and start at the 6-issue mark. Like...
Not anymore.
Damn it. But, yeah, I mean, like... When I was reading them, there was tie-ins and stuff, but like after
I haven't read an event in a long time, but almost every Marvel event that I have read within the past, I don't know, decade, half decade. I don't know what the last event that I read. None of them were recent. I always read them in trade later, but they're always like each event is stemming out. It's spiraling out of the previous event and leads into the next one. They're all like a constant fluid, like nothing ends.
See, I guess I just remember like I don't know. The last event I remember is probably not the last event I read, but like Civil War, I feel like ended. And yeah, there was Fallout and all this crap, and there was like Death of Captain America and this and that, and Civil War Fallout, and there's all the tie-in books, but like Spider-Man just went back to being a Spider-Man book. And I guess it's because...
I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree. Like, I don't care about the...
But I guess it's because
Saga.
like event books are different than the ongoing books.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, I hear what you're saying, and I don't care about the Infinity Saga or anything. And this is definitely spiraling out of the events of those things. That said, I don't feel like it's just like, we can't get away from the Infinity Saga. This feels like logical character fallout.
That's fair.
As opposed to just like, let's continue the Infinity Saga. Now we gotta search for
like,
the
we don't know what else to
Infinity
do.
S stones. It just feels like, what would these characters... Like, this is kind of what we were always talking about. Like, there's never any character growth. It's always just like the next movie, the character starts where they need to start and ends where they want them to end.
That's fair.
And in this one, it's just like looking at a character and saying like, this kind of traumatic thing happened to this person. How would they react to it?
And I guess this is more on me of just wanting to be done with Thanos and the movie. Like, I wanted a clean break from the movies. And I knew these wouldn't be. But I just like, again, wanted something different. Even just for a short time. You know, in comics, the event book is the event book. And that's the movie. And then, you know, there's a single tie-in issue or two in Amazing Spider-Man Ongoing. And I just wanted to, like, get back to just, like, a superhero story that was just, like, unrelated. I just wanted a break again. I just need more breaks.
I hear what you're saying. I feel like you're going to be disappointed because I feel like this is the most standalone-ish of all of these.
As far as I'm aware, the other ones, yeah, are...
Because the other two are specifically Fallout from Endgame.
And you do bring up a good point that, I mean, WandaVision is Fallout from Endgame as well, because it's Wanda dealing with that trauma. And I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it that I just honestly didn't, because I was too preoccupied when everybody started coming back from the dust snap. I was like, ugh, God damn it. Like,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm also just like, I don't know, the snap is a big event, and I don't need every movie to reference it, but honestly, so far, the only references outside of Endgame being the immediate sequel to the snap is Peter dealing with basically...
Having a throwaway line.
having a throwaway line about why none of his friends have aged over 5 years, and then just kind of having a bit of the world as it exists post-unsnap. This is just another thing where it's just like, yeah, there's fallout to the snap. I don't think in any way it needs to be a snap, because I was thinking like the 5-year difference doesn't really affect her age because she's already in her mid-20s or something, and I wouldn't have been able to tell you how old she should have been. I know it was like 90-something, but
yeah, in
the end, I don't care. She could have shown up and never have been snapped. But it's just kind of like, it's another little bit of the world of just like, how did some people like deal with the snap and the world when people just like returned? Because this is the first we see of people, to the Marvel Universe's credit, this was the first we see specifically of what happened after the snap was reversed. Mm-hmm. We just know that like people showed back up, but
now
like,
we know they showed up
Peter
in a horrific, traumatizing, like
just like people screaming in a hospital. Like, is it something I necessarily need to see? No, but to its credit, it's something we haven't seen. It does explain a little bit more of the world.
Yeah.
Is it important? No, but it's saying something.
It also doesn't help that I think the snap is maybe a little... I think there's some fridge logic in the snap, and I think we've talked about this.
There's a lot of fridge logic in the snap.
I think we've talked about it before, so we don't need to get into it here, but it's just like the more you think about it, the more you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. I don't know. Again, it's a me problem. We took some time off between the movies and this, and it's like, WandaVision is still the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know, and that's not fault of its own. It's doing something different. Gotta give it credit for that. Maybe What If is more what I'm looking for, where it's just like, and now for something completely different, and here you go. And it's just like, you sit down and read 4 issues of Spider-Man, and then you're like, I just want to read like X-Men right now. And that's not here. And I think that's what I wanted and was kind of hoping for. And not on anything they said or anything like that. I was just like, I just want like something different. And it was kind of
not different enough.
Yeah, and eye-rolly when they just went back to Thanos, which again, it makes sense. You're not wrong. And I think, character fallout, like, whatever. If this was just like Wanda even being pissed over Vision's death or whatever and like hiding around, like, I understood where it came from. Maybe it's just the small act of seeing or referencing the blip was just something that I didn't need and honestly like hit me weird because I already hate all this stuff anyways. But it is as with a lot of the stuff, it is a me issue of just, I didn't want it to reference, I wanted a clean break, and they didn't do that, and I wanted something a little different, and they didn't do that. And again, it's still the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What did I want? What did I expect? Yada, yada, yada. It says what's on the tin. It's just, well, after watching 23 movies, it didn't do something different. We're still here. I mean, it's similar to when we were talking about Power Rangers, and we'd finish a series, and I'd be so done, and then we'd watch one episode, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, like, this might do something different. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, it's just the same shit.
Yeah.
And there's, like, no respite.
Any other thoughts?
How nice are these half-season episodes going to be? I was thinking that, like, 10 minutes ago, when I was like, this is going to be, like, a 30-minute episode.
When we started, I was like, I don't really know. Like, we used to watch episode by episode and talk about it. So watching 3 to 4 should be easy, but then they kind of gel together in a way that just kind of becomes weird to talk about.
Well, and they are, going back to Power Rangers, those were Monster of the Week stuff. So we had distinct things to talk about. There was usually like, we always had to touch base on hey, it's the mini city, and we get to see a cool monster design. But none of that's here. This is all, for intents and purposes, a flowing narrative.
Something that I remember seeing when the show was going on, there was an article going around that said, like, WandaVision is basically just a movie that they're forcing us to watch week by week. And I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. I don't remember the exact thing, but it was something where I was just like, that sounds so stupid to me. Because this isn't a movie. I will say, when we get to it, and this isn't a spoiler, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a 6-hour movie. I don't say that detrimentally. It just is. It's a 6-hour movie. It is telling it's a mini series. It is. But out of any of these, it's basically they took a movie and they did what we always wanted it to do. They gave it more time to breathe.
But they just gave the wrong parts more time.
Maybe.
We'll get there.
But with this, I don't feel like this is a movie. This is a miniseries. I honestly don't think it would work as a movie because you wouldn't be able to do those first 3 episodes in a movie. It needs to function as standalone episodes in order to actually, like, I guess this is more of an artistic vision thing, but I feel like it needs those first 3 episodes to be individual episodes to do what it wants to do. And I guess to do what it wants to do is to have the fun it wants to have.
Here's the hybrid of it. I think, and I told you this before we recorded, and I told you this while we were recording, I would have rather watched the 4 episodes today. And I think I kind of agree with, is this a 5-hour and 50-minute movie? I don't know.
I will say, going forward with the 5 episodes we have left, you may as well watch those in one sitting. Because it just continues. After that, it's kind of...
Well, I don't know. Some of that
direction. I don't think you could make a movie, even a 5-hour movie. I don't think you could make a movie that does what it wants to do at the beginning, because you would maybe open up with a truncated 15-minute version of a sitcom plot and then jump into what's going on with Jimmy Woo. Like, you would need to grab your audience sooner to tell them that there's a plot going on. Basically, I don't think you could turn this into a movie without completely reformatting it and losing the sitcom element.
But I think
I think it could still be there, but it wouldn't be there. I think in order for this to work, and I guess work from the meta narrative of 1, the fun thing that they want to do is an experiment, just recreating a sitcom, and 2, kind of like confusing your audience for a bit. It needs to be a TV show. Because if you tell everybody that it's a movie, and then the movie starts and you're watching a sitcom, 1, they're not going to keep that going for 22 minutes. They're going to do like a 15-minute sitcom parody. And 2, like, everybody knows this has got to have an ending. This has got to go somewhere. With this show, everyone rightfully probably assumed, even I did, it's going to go somewhere. At the end, there's probably going to be Marvel Universe stuff happening where, someone comes to wake Wanda up or something. It's not just going to be each episode is a new sitcom. But, you watch the first 3 episodes, especially when it debuted with the first 2, and you're just watching a sitcom with some slightly weird stuff going on. You go, maybe this is just a sitcom show with a like meta narrative going on in the background.
So here's the alternative, though. This goes back to bingeable. Like, is this a movie that they forced us to watch in 30-minute segments? No. Is this a show that should be watched in a 5-hour and 50-minute segment? Debatable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I've said, I'm not one for binging, so I think Netflix shows are made for the binge. I do not, like, I think even you do. I know my brother does. I know a lot of people that don't watch, like, Netflix shows in a binge. They'll watch 1 or 2 episodes here or there. I think Netflix shows are narratively structured to be watched as a binge. And if I do not watch them in a binge, even if that binge means it's like 2 to 3 sittings, they're impossible to follow and impossible to stay interesting because they are completely propelled by nothing but that forward motion of it, knowing that as soon as that episode is over, it's going to queue up the next one and you're going to continue to sit your ass there and watch it. And I don't think that's what this does.
I would say that this would benefit from that, honestly. And maybe it's just the first 4 episodes. And I mean, you just told me that I might as well watch the last 5. And
like I said, from here on forward, I agree. You may as well, like, it is a bingeable show. I just honestly think the first 3 stand better on their own. I think you can watch them as in a binge like we did, but I feel like the pregnancy episode would have had more of an impact on me if we had talked about it after only watching it, as opposed to watching it sandwiched between.
Right, but I still think it's also
episodes.
a nothing episode. Like,
yes,
I think there's just something, like, I mean, I don't know. They released the first 2 episodes, so it's not even like they were like, these need to be week by week or day by day, because that's what we're going for. You know, the sitcom thing, there's the thing, it's one thing to turn this into a 5-hour and 50-minute movie and being like, hey, there's no credits, there's no nothing, like, it's just boom, boom, it's just a continuous runtime. But there's something about that episode break, even if you binge it and you turn it into a 5-hour and 50-minute movie, you watch them all in one go. There's still that episodic break that lets your brain reset, that lets the story reset.
Yeah.
That I think
I'll give you
helps. That. You know, I think you could watch this all in a 5-hour and 50-minute sitting, and I think those 3 opening sitcoms would play the same.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't disagree. I think honestly, I kind of rescind my argument. I think my contention was mostly just like, I don't think it needs to be binged. I think you can watch it week by week, and I would prefer to watch it week by week.
And that's how they released it. That's what
But I don't think that's necessarily, I think that was the argument I heard, but not the argument you were making. And I think that's where my
been there.
defense came from.
And honestly, I mean, like you said, they released it week by week. And I honestly think that would have been hard for me, especially after that 3rd episode. And I guess this one, I'm just kind of like, eh. But I don't know. I especially since they're like half hour, I really would have liked to watch these these 4 episodes. I mean, we're still going to do half seasons because we just don't have that time, I don't think, right now. But
plus, I think all of them have an interesting talking point halfway through.
Yeah, and I mean, we already ignored some stuff in these that could maybe be an interesting topic, or maybe, you know, if we were talking about it episode by episode, we'd talk about it. But we just don't have that time. We don't want to make a million episodes on each episode, and I think it's good to watch it in a halfway point and just kind of step back and say, okay, here we go. But even if we did, you know, the first 4 episodes, watch them all in one go, record, and then watch the next 5 and record, you know what I mean? I mean, that's a long day, but...
Anything else we need to talk about in these 4?
I don't think so. I'm trying to run through things.
The only other very minor thing that I remember is when they find the helicopter in the meta episode, she shows the picture, and then they're like, why'd you color it?
Yeah. And
she's like, no, it came that way. And I was like, weren't all your TVs like old TVs that wouldn't show color? How would you even know?
Well, maybe they weren't that old. I mean, cathode ray TVs.
Well, later on, they show like a whole bunch of TVs. And like when you get to the 70s episode, they definitely have a color TV. But I was thinking like, I don't know, Darcy was watching on like that really old black and white TV. I don't think it would show color.
It depends.
But whatever.
I don't know what kind of TV she had. I don't really think there is anything. I mean, honestly, nothing really happened. In 4 episodes, if you think, you know, if you go beat by beat, like there's mystery, which what more can you talk about other than being like, remember like the aesthetic of the beekeeper guy? That was a cool scene. Like that was a cool visual.
If we were watching episode by episode, I think we could talk about each episode for at least half an hour. But yeah, when you lump them all together, there's nothing really worth like struggling to remember. It's all we kind of like hit everything. Oh, wow. Seth, give me 2 put-ups and a put-down.
My first put-up is going to be... the sitcom stuff is impressive. Or at least the first 2. We talked on that a lot here, and I mean, right out of the gate. That's the thing that... I mean, the first episode was so on-the-nose, straight-faced sitcom that was so impressive, I didn't quite care for it because it did its job so well. And I was just like, I just don't love like the 50s sitcom style. Like we kept saying, the magic act in the second episode was not only a good sitcom script, but it also had some of that world blurring and stuff like that with the radio and the helicopter and stuff. So that was my favorite episode.
What was your put down?
Well, I only did one put up. So my first put up is the impressive attention to detail of the sitcom bits. My second put up is going to be, I'm hemming and hawing here. I was going to say Jimmy Woo. I actually kind of like his character here. I don't think he's that different than Ant-Man.
I feel like he's a little less goofy, but he's still goofy.
He seems capable.
There was a lot of stuff online about people saying, like, give him his own X-Files style show where he and Darcy just, like, travel the Marvel Universe and do...
I don't know if he
Monster of
needs
the Week
that,
stuff.
but that could be cool.
I don't think he needs that, but I think that could be a fun show. But I'm also someone who's like, when there's a fun character or something, everybody's just like, give them their own series. And I'm just like, let's not like bastardize the thing that's interesting. Let them stay interesting.
Yeah.
Let's not ruin it.
I could give him, like, I didn't care for the astrophysicist from Thor, but Darcy, yeah. But Jimmy Woo is kind of doing it for me. I'm excited to see him do, like...
Did he woo your Jimmy?
Yeah, man. That's great. I'm excited to see him do, like...
I'm glad you don't remember our episodes, because that was a joke we already made.
Oh, that's new to me, man. But yeah, I'm excited to see him do more stuff, do like some cool FBI cop stuff in small town Westview. My put down is going to be episode 3, mainly because I didn't really find it that good. I mean, I didn't like the script.
I guess I wouldn't say it's not... I mean, I guess you're right. You didn't like the script. For me, I wouldn't necessarily say it's not good. I just don't think it's that interesting. It's not that memorable.
It's not memorable. I didn't care for, like, the pregnancy plot of, like, oh, you're having, like, a super quick pregnancy. I honestly really didn't care that much about the end when Geraldine was like, remember Ultron? And she was like, what do you mean, Ultron? And I guess I just, like, didn't care about kind of the whole episode.
Hey, speaking of Westview, in episode 4, when they talk to the cops...
Yeah, and they're facing
they're
facing the dome, and they
drive into the dome. I wondered that when I was watching it. I was like, where did those cops go?
I thought that too. Because they're facing the cars driving into the dome, but we just see them drive away and we didn't see them do a UE.
Yeah, and Wu and Darcy aren't like, where'd those cops go? They know the cops drove off.
Do you think
it's weird.
When Jimmy Woo was leaving, he did a wooey?
Yep.
Good.
My first put up is going to be all the sitcom stuff, specifically episode 2. I think episode 2 is just genuinely a funny, enjoyable episode.
Episode 3 is a bad sitcom script and a bad episode script, TV script in general. I think episode 2 is a good sitcom script and a good WandaVision script.
There's a lot of funny jokes, and I will also say, like, Elizabeth Olsen and what the fuck is his name? Paul Bettany.
They got good chemistry.
And they're just, like, great comedic actors.
Yeah.
They do a lot of, like, fun, like, faces.
Elizabeth Olsen
and
was
they
on
just, like,
so many
really...
seasons of Full House. I mean...
No, that was their sisters.
Elizabeth Olsen probably did comedy stuff sometime.
But they do a lot of good, like, mugging at the camera, and just... Same thing with her neighbor, Agatha.
What do you mean it's
Agnes.
her sisters? Isn't there only 2 Olsen twins?
There are 2 Olsen twins. Elizabeth is not one of them.
Oh, is that why I hate her?
It's Mary-Kate and Ashley.
And then
Olsen.
the third one.
Elizabeth, I believe, is their older sister, but she's not one of the Olsen twins.
Family life.
No, they all do a great job. There's a lot of fun, hammy acting that is just a lot of fun to watch. And then, like you said, the sitcom stuff is very impressive. I remember them saying during, like, the little, like, the first episode when they were using all she was using her magic and stuff, they were really holding, like, pots and pans up with strings to make it look like they would have filmed it then. There are a couple bits where they kind of forget that stuff, though. But for the most part, all that stuff is a lot of fun. There's also a part in episode 1 when Agnes shows up to deliver all that food, and she's, like, pushing her around the kitchen, which is funny. But anyway, when she shows up, I don't know if it's intentional or not, or if it wasn't, if they didn't notice it, or if they were just like, keep it in, it's funny. The door doesn't close. When she closes, she like specifically goes to close the door behind Agnes, and then it like pops back open, and it's just like kind of hanging open while she's pushing her around the kitchen.
I bet that's probably something that wasn't planned, but it's like, yeah, that's a sitcom thing. Like,
kind of funny. Yeah. You know, the sets have those flimsy walls, so the door just doesn't like stay in the
It was also
latch.
something in the first episode. They open the front door when they invite I think when Paul Bettany first comes in from work or something, he opens the door and they don't close it. And I was like, God damn it. I hate that trope. I hate it. I know it's not like people don't try and do it, but it's just something that's like, I gotta go to the next marker. I was going to say that Elizabeth Olsen is the younger sister.
Ah, okay.
Which had to suck for her. Or not, I don't know. You're living a showbiz
She's
family.
more successful, apparently, than...
Mary-Kate and Ashley?
I don't think the Olsen twins are doing anything
To be fair, they
anymore.
did everything between the ages of, 2 and
Yes.
14. They probably were like, okay, I'm calling it.
My second put-up is... I had it, and I forgot. I don't know. So, instead, as a placeholder that is just going to be my second put-up, because I can't think of what it was going to be, my second put-up is I like the... So far, I don't really care so much for the commercials, but I like the intros. They have a new theme song for each episode, and they that
goes back to the sitcom stuff.
It was going to be part of my put up number 1, and I kind of forgot to say it. And then when I moved on to put up number 2, I was like, I don't remember what put up number 2 was going to be. So I guess so.
But yeah, I don't care for the commercials. They're whatever.
Yeah, we'll talk more about them in the next one. My put down is I don't care for what the show actually is. It's not bad. I know that that's most people's jam. They want to see more of the Marvel nonsense. I don't really care for the meta narrative, and that's more of a next time discussion, but I don't care for the plot that it's telling. It's not bad, but it was more interesting when it was a mystery. Once you get all the answers, I realized, I don't care about this. And not even just because no mystery is as interesting as when you get all the answers, but it's also just I kind of didn't care in the first place, but at least when I didn't know the answers, it was at least kind of intriguing to try and piece it together.
It's also kind of small town mystery at the beginning. And so it's not even what was the deal with the drone? What was the deal with the beekeeper? What was the deal with the choking? Because they don't have individual answers. The answer is, Wanda's just kind of being crazy. And so it's it kind of writes off any small town weirdness.
Yeah. I remember watching this before and watching the first 3 episodes and being when it zooms out in the first episode to that TV screen and then Darcy closing her little notebook, I remember kind of thinking at the time, I wasn't thinking are people just observing this town? Instead, it was is that who's in charge?
It's like
someone's
a Truman
keeping
Show
tabs on her because they, yeah.
Well, and especially since some of the people are we can't escape, but it's do they know then? And I mean, maybe this will be answered later on, but how much free will do they have? Because a lot of it, at least early on, is just, I mean, I guess I'm probably answering my own question because now that I know everything and they went through and found everybody, it's okay, she kidnapped all these people and made them do this thing. But it's just kind of the show can't exist without cracks, but it's just okay, so she can literally make Stephen King's The Dome and just control everything, even when she's not around. But people are still just you just can't escape. It's so you're in you're trapped. You're not a sitcom guy. But I digress. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you like this, tell a friend. If you didn't, then lie to a friend. Check us out on Twitter at SoHowAbout. You can find me on Twitter at SethKumpf. You can find Andrew on Twitter at TessuDownist. And subscribe to us on YouTube at SoHowAbout.
And join us next time when we do this once more with interference.
Watcher. Two.
Seth, now that the mics are off, what are we watching
Well,
next
Andrew,
time?
I'm glad you asked. We're going to be watching the second half, episodes 5 through 9 of WandaVision. We're going to learn so much stuff about a thing, Jimmy's Woo, and it'll be fine probably. And then we'll go into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we'll watch another Marvel movie with that. Do you remember when we watched The Green Knight and you watched Pig, and we watched things that weren't Marvel things?
My friend was you've watched so many movies lately, and I was just I just kind of had to. Granted, one of those was Fast 9, which isn't that far off from a Marvel movie, and the other one was Black Widow, but I was also within 2 days I watched The Green Knight and Pig, and I was just it was so refreshing to just watch something that
I didn't even love The Green Knight as much as I wanted to, but just watching it, I was just wash over me. Just get in here, A24. Make me feel better.